Hi, my name is Ayomide. Welcome to the World Without People podcast, where we journey into some pretty amazing stories of everyday people. I believe strongly in the interconnectedness of our human experience, that we can color and enrich our lives by sharing and learning from our lived experiences. In this concise podcast, I bring to you engaging conversations like a chapter in a vibrant book designed to motivate and encourage and challenge and, of course, brighten your day. My guests also get to ask me one question, and there's no telling what they might come up with. So thank you for tuning in. Grab your coffee or tea, or listen on the go to some amazing stories of real people. After all, what is a world without people? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the World Without People podcast. My name is Ayomide, and this is so funny because I swear we've tried to do this like 5 times, but we are finally doing it, and so I'm so excited to introduce my guest to you today because we're going to be talking about sex, which I think is a very important conversation to have. So, welcome, Yeside Agbola, to the show.
Thank you, Ayomide. It's great to be here again.
Finally. Okay.
Finally.
Yeside is a mom. She's a public health specialist for over 10 years. First of all, if you guys don't already know, Olori Koitos is her Instagram handle. Please go check it out. Like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about sex today because she does a lot on teaching sexual education. Is that the way to say it?
I say sexual education, but all in the same, reproductive health, women's rights, women's health, all in the same boat. You got it, sis.
That's good because I think for me, the first question I want to ask you is kind of left field, but it stemmed from the fact that we've been trying to do this, and I've been very much like, oh God, I'm only going to do the people you want me to talk to, and so then the question is like, okay, maybe God doesn't want you to talk about sex. So I think that you being, and I believe you are a Christian as well. I saw a poster, anyways, of you going to my mom's church, actually, to talk about sex, Holy Ghost Christian Center.
I've been to a couple of churches.
Yeah. So how does that work? Because there's obviously the adults and then there's the married, but then there are people like me who are older and single, and then there's the youths. So how do you navigate those conversations?
Part of my training as a health educator is bringing appropriate content to varied groups of people. So if I am talking to young people, there is an appropriate way to speak about sex, and depending on the age, I tell people that we can have sex education from as early as 2 years old, because when we're talking to 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds, toddlers, about sex education, we're not talking about the mechanics of sex. We have to understand that sexual health is a form of health that's as important as our physical health. So when we're talking to young people, we're talking, well, to like say toddlers, for example, we're talking about parts of the body. Are they naming them anatomically correct? When children are calling, say their vulva and their penis, when they're calling them pee and wee wee and their sweet spot and other things, you are actually opening them up to the possibility of abuse, because somebody is going to take that, and it's possible for somebody to take that and weaponize that. But when they know the anatomical names, the correct anatomical names for them, they understand that these are parts of the body, like the legs and the arms. They understand that they are private parts of the body, and these private parts are parts that should not be seen by others. They're parts that you don't show to other people, and other people should not ask to show theirs to you, and other people should not ask you to show yours to them. We teach them about body autonomy, respecting other people's bodies. This is part of sex education. People think that when people hear sex education, they think only about how to have sex. But before you get to that point, there's so much more. As they become teenagers and young adults, we start telling them about, what do you look for in a healthy relationship? What are signs of an unhealthy relationship? What are some red flags you should run from? We did not get that.
Right.
And a lot of people are in a lot of relationships that they shouldn't be in, and they realize too late that, these are some red flags I should have spotted. Are you feeling some type of way about being in a relationship? Even with friendships, we think that we're talking that, oh, we're thinking only romantic relationship, or even it starts from friendships, right? You're friends with this person that talks to you in a certain way, that makes you feel a certain way. Should you continue to be friends with them if they are not lifting your spirits?
Right. Right.
That will, when you learn, it's a muscle, right? You learn that skill. That skill, when you then are ready for a romantic relationship, you're able to exercise that muscle again, so that you are now able to say, no, I don't want to be in situations like this. I choose to be with somebody who elevates me, with somebody who respects me, because love is not only about the romantic feeling, it's a lot about action. So sex education really varies from group to group. If I'm talking to a group of, say, women who have never had sex before, it will be different than if I'm talking to a group of women who have been having sex for a decade. It will be different if I'm talking to women who have, entered the menopausal stage. It'll be talking if I'm talking to new couples, intended couples, new couples that have been in it for a while, or couples that are even what do we call them when the kids leave home? Empty nesters.
Yes.
That's another life cycle. And we have to understand that sex is in every life cycle. It's like people say, is it food? Yes, it is. Because even if you're not having sex, your sexual health is still important.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. I do see that porn is becoming really, really, I don't even know what the word is right now, but it's really, especially for the youths, I fear that it's distorting how they think about sex, and maybe even related to like masturbation as well.
Well, that's a loaded topic, sis. Okay. Let's take porn and youth going into porn. A lot of times when there is something missing, when you have a gap, people will try to fill that gap. The lack of correct sex education for the youth leads a lot of people to porn and using porn as sex education, because they don't have access to correct, wholesome, holistic sex education that is not, don't get pregnant, don't get STDs. And some people don't even get that type of sex education. It's just, I am 36 this year, and in my time, a lot of people's moms were telling them, oh, once your period starts, don't let a man look at you, don't sit with a man, don't let a man touch you because you're going to get pregnant. Don't you dare bring this pregnancy. Don't bring, a pregnancy to me. I'm not going to take it. That if you get pregnant, that's the end of your life. You're not going to be able to go to university. You're not going to be able to go to school anymore. Or people that were even in university, or boys that they say, don't impregnate any girl. Then, they're not saying don't have sex. They're saying don't get pregnant, or don't come back with some disease. A lot of times they don't even tell us about diseases. We found those out on the streets, right? So back to the question about porn and sex. A lot of people, even adults, use porn as sex education because they do not know that there are resources for them to actually learn about sex in a less graphic manner. You don't necessarily need to see somebody putting, penis inside the vagina to learn about sex. There are ways. I teach sex education, but I always say that, like, if you go on my Instagram page, it is a page that you can learn from, and the person that you don't have to be ashamed or feel some type of way that somebody next to you is reading from it as well. And that's because it's important for you to be able to learn about sex in a way that edifies you. Right. So if young people have more access to that, I think that they would use it less as education. Now, of course, there are people who use who use porn as entertainment, right? Also remember that porn is it's not made for young people, right? It's made for adults to watch. A lot of it comes from a male perspective, and which is why I say there's a danger in watching porn, which is it sets you up for expectations that are unrealistic. When you and I are having this podcast, you're going to edit it. The places where there are pauses, if I make any mistake, if you and I say something odd, if somebody comes into this room and starts making noise now, we're going to edit it out. When the finished product comes out, it is going to be a clean, smooth listening experience for the person listening. And the person is going to think that was how it came about. They will not know that we had 5 takes. They will not realize that we had 5 takes. They will not realize that before we had this conversation, I had clicked on something. I had tried using my AirPods. I couldn't hear you. You couldn't hear me. We had tried all these things until we found a way to make it work. But when we put it out, it's going to be smooth and perfect.
Right.
When that's the same thing with porn, right? With porn, they edit. So when you see the woman taking that penis into her mouth all the way to the back of her throat and she's not choking, and you now start to think that your babe that chokes when she tries to deep throat you, or you, the woman, think that something is wrong with you because you cannot relax the muscles of your back enough to choke. You didn't see the part where she choked. You did not see the part where, she was like, ow, 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 when he entered her without lube and they had to try again. But you think that because you are having this experience, now something is wrong with the sex that you're having.
Right.
Because that is now the standard. The problem with porn is not the entertainment. The fact that it's because, people talk about, there's ethical porn where, they agree to it, it's made from women's perspective, all of that. The biggest problem for me that I see is the expectation. You see these bodies, they look perfect. Your body is not perfect. Now you're angry because you have stretch marks and varicose veins on your thighs. And you're thinking that whoever her name is on there did not. It gives a lot of men have self-esteem issues about their penis because they have been watching porn and they have seen men with 10 inches. Let me tell you, most women will run. But even women have been set up to now expect that because again, right? So there's a lot that pornography brings to the table that is not the cons for me are more than the pros. Yeah. Essentially. Absolutely. I always tell people that say, oh, porn this and all. I'm like, you know what? The best porn is the one you create in your mind. We are watching somebody else's fantasy. What is your fantasy? Create it. Set the scene. In fact, when you do that, sometimes I even tell some clients, especially maybe when I did more of personal one-on-one coaching, and maybe someone saying, oh, my sex drive is, I say, you know what, just sit down here. I want you to create your own erotic movie. Set the scene in your head. What is happening? Where are we? What are you doing? What is being done? You can actually do that and do less of, watching somebody else's fantasy, especially for women, because porn is from a male gaze and it doesn't help us. But yeah.
Okay. And then, so the second part was masturbation and sexual health, because trying to figure out what you were trying to say with sexual health. What does that even
Okay, with sexual health for someone who's not having sex.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we say health, what is health? Well, health is the totality of someone's well-being, right? So when we talk about your sexual well-being, I'm not talking about whether you're having sex or not. I'm first saying, okay, look at your health, right? Look at if you're a woman, for example, what is your vaginal health? Are you free of, when you think about your hormones, are you free of infections, and then also things like how well do you understand your vulva? How well do you understand your vagina? Do you know where it is? Do you understand where your clitoris is? Do you understand what brings you pleasure? Not necessarily for masturbation is not for everybody. It's good for women to masturbate. I believe in it because I believe that when you know the way to your house, it is easier for you to show somebody how to get there. But if you've never been there before and you don't know how to direct somebody, how are you going to tell? I say I'm coming to Buki's house and Buki says, oh yeah, when you get to Lagos, you'll find it. And then I'm angry that Buki does not know. Buki is there. Then the next night I say, look at that Buki. She doesn't even know how to get to my house. How's she supposed to? She's not a mind reader. She's not a babalao. So that's what I feel about that. However, even for people who are not now removing masturbation from it, it's just about understanding what are your sexual drivers. What are the things that put you in the mood? What are the things that are the breaks, right? Emily Nagoski talks about, think about your sex, don't think so much about your sexual, just think about the things that accelerate your sexual pleasure and the things that decrease it. So, for example, right, you can be somebody that if your house is messy, there's no sex that can come to you that is going to bring you in the mood, right? No matter how you want it. You're somebody that maybe work, I hear men talk about how like when they have financial issues, they can't get it up. They just cannot get an erection. I don't think that you have to be in the middle of having sex. I mean, yes, you can learn that you can learn on the job, essentially, right? Especially if you're saying, oh, I want to be celibate, and in this celibacy I also want to stay away from things that will increase my desire to look for sex.
Right.
So I can understand when people, are staying away from that. But I also think that even in that, get to know yourself better. Emotions are part of sexual health. What are the things that you desire in a partner? What are the things that are quote unquote romantic to you? What is your love language? How do you relate with even your friends? Because see, we make romantic relationships as if they're the highest form, but there's an intimacy that you can get, an emotional intimacy you can get from loved ones, mental intimacy. I was just seeing a post on Instagram by the village auntie, and she was talking about different forms of intimacy. And I was just reflecting on how, besides physical intimacy, you can have the other forms of intimacy and intimacy you can have with people that are not romantically related to you. People have prayer partners. They're spiritually intimate with them. These are people that you connect with on a spiritual level, deep spiritual level. And you're not, it could be a man, it could be a woman, and you're not in a romantic relationship with them. Does this is not any less for me. It's not any less than, say, a romantic relationship. It's just that we have so much so made being, being with a man, especially for women, being with a man, the totality of our existence. But it's important. But you're a whole human being. I like the word being. It is a present continuous. It means that you are not be, you are not being, you are continuing to be. And so you have to take care of all different parts of you.
I love that. I really do. And I'm thinking of some of my, again, I call them youths, but they're now graduating or graduated. But for the males in the house, I just want you to maybe, because I struggle with, not struggle, I always tell them wait, right? But, I can't control that, right? I'm team celebrates, wait until marriage, blah, blah, blah. But I cannot control that. So, I wonder what you would say to young men in going into relationships, how they're supposed to navigate their own feelings. Because I think, like you said, sometimes I don't even think men realize that there's feelings involved with sex, and it's not just about just doing the act, right? And what does that look like for your first time, and things like that. Like, maybe just don't rush into doing it the first time. So anyways, just for my young people out here, especially the guys.
I think if I'm talking to young men, I always tell them that, like, don't feel like there's a competition. I believe that a lot of young men have sex earlier than they would have because their friends are having sex. But I also know that the research has shown that men or women, people who have more information to sex education, who have more access to sex education, are more likely to delay their onset of having sex, whether they're men or women. There hasn't been like a gender disaggregation. I haven't seen, well, any research on gender disaggregation, but the research tells us that teens and young people who are well sexually educated, they delay the onset of having sex. So what does that tell us? It tells us to do more in terms of educating. So I'm putting it back on us, the adults in their lives, to provide them with, when you open up the discussion and the conversation about what we're about sex, and making it less of a big deal, you'll be surprised. People think that the more you talk about sex, the more likely somebody is to want to have sex. However, I believe that if we talk to young people, if young people are well educated, meaning that you understand that sex is not just a physical thing, there are emotions attached to it. There are, I mean, not to sound very old school, but you have to consider pregnancy. You also have to consider STIs. You also have to consider that you are making a connection with this person. I don't believe in soul ties. However, I do believe that if you're going to have sex with somebody, you want that person to be somebody that you love and that you respect, and that is mutual. So that and you're making that decision with your eyes wide open, understanding the pros and the cons, even as an adult, because we're talking about young people. There are 30 plus people that are having sex with people they shouldn't be having sex with, all because they believe that this is what I should be doing at this stage, or I'm at this point in my relationship, but they're not looking at it. They've never had a conversation about sex with this person. They've never asked, what are your green lights? What are your red lights? What are the things that, okay, you want to happen during this sexual encounter? What are the things that are no-go areas for you? What are some of the things that you're like, I might be okay with trying, I'm not really sure? They've never even had that conversation with themselves.
Right.
Not to talk of having that conversation with another person. If you're not comfortable enough to talk about sex with the person you want to have sex with, you shouldn't be having sex.
Amen. Amen. And which brings me to my next question, because you again straddle the line of being a public health specialist and doing sexual health education.
There's
So
no one and the same.
well, to be fair, true. And especially because this is your day-to-day job as well, where you are working with HIV AIDS population. And so that brings me to the question, like, why aren't we more preaching abstinence across the world? And especially in Africa, because we're still seeing increased rates of HIV AIDS.
I can speak categorically for Nigeria. The rates of HIV are not increasing in Nigeria. Okay. We're not. What we're seeing is obviously the prevalence, like let's talk about prevalence versus incidence. The prevalence, how do I put it? There's a medium to high. Yes, Nigeria has the third highest burden of HIV. But you have to think about it because of our population size.
Right.
The percentage, right? When you now look at what is our percentage of HIV in the general population, we have a lot of countries that come before us. Yeah. We have been able to, it doesn't mean that the HIV epidemic is at should I say, they say it's like a mid-wave epidemic in Nigeria. So it's not shocking. For example, I work in Lagos State, and I can tell you that we have been able to keep incidence. Of course, we can't eradicate it. We're trying to eliminate new infections by 2030. Right. We hope we can do that. However, right, going back to your question about abstinence, we preach abstinence, right? We have the ABCs of HIV prevention. A is abstinence, B is be faithful to your partner, C is use a condom if you're not going to be faithful, and D is discover your status. Now, let's be real, Bukola, we're human beings. People are going to have sex. People are going to have unprotected sex. People are not going to be abstinent. That's the reality. So what has abstinence education done for us? It has given us higher rates of STIs. It has given us higher rates of unplanned pregnancy. Because what's going to happen is people are going to do it. Because when you're saying be abstinent, I'm not only, right? Let me underline the word only. If we say be abstinent and we don't give people resources for when they're not abstinent, we run into a lot of trouble. We did. So now we're seeing that, okay, you know what? Maybe this abstinence only. We're still saying be abstinent. We're not. That's why the A is abstinence. But we also recognize that people may not be abstinent. And so should we now leave those people who are abstinent, who are now ashamed that they're not abstinent, and don't take the right steps to safeguard their health, right? So I'm telling you that, look, be abstinent. But look, if things happen and you choose to engage in sex, I want you to now be what? Be faithful to one partner. I want you to be safe. How are you going to be safe? You're having sex with only one person, and you're making sure that that one person is having sex with just you. Because if that person is having sex with multiple other people, you are essentially having sex with those people, right? If you're not sure about that, what do? Use a condom. That is the C, right? Use a condom. And D is discover your status. So get tested. Make sure you and your partner are getting tested. So if you can't do A, you will do B. If you cannot do B, you will do C. Do you get what I mean? And if you cannot do C, do D. So at least you know what your status is. But we cannot say that we are going to just say, oh, be abstinent only. It's not going to work. That's the truth. Yeah. Right? We will hope that more people would be abstinent, at least abstinent until they are old enough. But guess what? Even with that, right? we saw in the US that at a point there was a lot of new cases of geriatrics getting people who had, been married, had been faithful to their partners, life was good. Then they hit 60, 50, their partner dies. Now they're living in a retirement community, or they're now newly single, and they didn't grow up in the time where HIV existed, right? So now they're now in a relationship with somebody and they have sex. They didn't ask about their HIV status. They didn't get tested. They didn't use condoms.
Right.
And then they get infected with HIV and other STIs, syphilis, herpes, gonorrhea, chlamydia, just name it. Right. There's a high rate of it in that community. And why is that? Because they don't even, like, in their mind, they're like, condom. I'm not getting, because for them, condom is for pregnancy prevention. Right. So because they're not trying to get pregnant, they're not, you get, so are we going to preach abstinence to that group as well?
No, and I think that's the point, right? Like, it's funny because I know this, like, that abstinence does not work as the only method, but I think maybe what you're buttressing now is that, we increase the use of condom, but I feel like, how, like, back in the days, I would see ads about condoms all the time. I swear I don't see it. We're now more talking about abortion pill or, all of that kind of, what they call it, morning after pill.
There's still, condoms are still advertising. They might just not be advertising on TV. But also, remember, you're in the US now, and there's a big, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, abortion, there's more talk about, like, abortions and things like that. But even that needs to come to the table because, again, right, this is all part of sexual health. Having the option. Nobody says you should go and do the option. Like, when I tell people think, maybe I talk about a certain thing on oloricoitus, and they say, oh, wow, you and your husband must just be rolling, up and down. All you people do is have sex and have all kinds of wild sex. And I said, did I tell you that I was doing this?
Right.
I'm giving you options. I'm letting you know, I'm expanding your mind. I'm expanding, your information bank to let you know that this is not the only way you can go. You can also go right or left, up, down, 30 degrees to the left and whatnot. You can now choose. No, it's the same way I tell people that, if I'm going to a brother, so I'm talking to newly intended couples and I'm saying, I talk about masturbation, I talk about, oral sex, I talk about all these things. I'm letting you know that these are your options. You can choose. It could not be for you. Everything is not for everybody. Right. And we have to be okay with that. Everybody, that's why, again, abstinence is great, but abstinence is not for everybody. Yeah. So if we recognize that and we take away the shame, you see, the problem is the shame and stigma. Right. The shame and stigma, and it happens in all ways, and there's such a big shame and stigma already about sex, especially if you're having sex outside of marriage or let me take it back and say, if you're having sex outside of what your society prescribes to be okay, right? There's a lot of shame that comes with that, but that shame leads to a lot of unhealthy behaviors that at the end of the day does not help you. So my thing is, let us take away the shame and the stigma, so that then you know that, okay, you know what, I didn't wait, but I'm going to have sex, but I'm going to have sex safely. Okay, I tried and I got pregnant. Well, I don't plan to be this was not a planned pregnancy. This person I got pregnant with is not somebody I want to be connected to for the rest of my life because of this child. And at this point, because I'm not able to take care of this child, I have options. But when you feel like you don't have options, you know what happens? People now, okay, for example, you get an unplanned pregnancy. Now you're pregnant. And get this, most abortions are not single women. Married women who already have kids have the highest rate of abortions.
I did not know that.
I'm telling you, because they don't let you know that. Because when they're talking about abortions, they're talking about this single girl who is, irresponsible, just living and hoeing her way around town, and now she's pregnant and she doesn't want to take care of the consequences. Or no, sis, most people that get abortions have had a child before. and they realize that this cannot work. Imagine a woman with 4 children struggling to take care of those 4 children, getting pregnant, and she knows that she cannot bring a 5th child to this world because there is no way. Financially, emotionally, because each child requires more than just being able to feed, clothe, and send them to school. So this woman and her partner make a decision to have an abortion. Sometimes these women don't even tell their cousins. Do you know how long African women have been having abortions? Do you know how many agbos there are? How many mixes there are? My dear sister, it's not today. So all this noise and stuff, I just laugh because they don't understand. Because again, guess who's making the most noise? Men that just want to, impose their will on women's bodies. If a woman chooses to have an abortion, why is it your problem? Why?
Conversation exactly.
Conversation has moved to another.
No, and I don't even think it's so left field since we're talking about sexual health, but it's just something that honestly it's too hard to understand. Like, it makes total sense to me, especially when it comes to the idea of someone's health, right? Like how it compromises the woman's health, especially. But I think, obviously, I'm Christian, so there's that part of me that is like, oh, but we're not supposed to kill. But then it's like, who would? So even sometimes I'm like, forget anything else. Who would we rather die? The one that has
or the child now born to parents
home,
to an abusive. And remember, people think that abuse is only about what is done. Neglect is also a form of abuse.
Yeah.
Right? And as I am also a Christian, and I like to think that, there's no sin that is greater than another. So, and the Bible says we have all sinned and have fallen short. So, he who has not sinned, let them cast the first stone. The person who is shouting about abortions, I hope to God they did not tell a lie today. I also hope to God that they did not, covet anything. I also hope to God, that they did not, steal anybody's money in any form or way, or cheat somebody out of what was rightly their due. I also hope that they are being charitable. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm saying that it is the fact of life. And who are we to judge?
Absolutely. And I think that's where I stand on it, and everybody knows that about me. But before I let you go, you've talked a lot about feminine or feminine friendship, or just friendship in general, I would say. And you talked a lot about women, and I know, long history of you also have girls. You went to QC. This is how I know Yesterday, by the way, she is really besties with my cousin, who they went to QC together. And I used to say that partners, right?
Partners. Yes.
Yeah. And I used to say that, QC girls and all the envy and jealousy and fighting and all of that. But one thing about Yesterday that I think, even in just the few times we've tried to record, I've seen how much he values friendships and female friendships especially. So I just want you to leave us with one last word around that.
Well, first of all, shout out to all my Queen's College old girls. Queen's College was a massive part of my life. I was there for 6 years, but I think it shaped a lot of my outlook towards women. There's a lot of talk these days about, no new friends, women friendships, women are catty and this. I know that those exist, but my experience, first of all, I'm the first child of 3 girls. I have 3 daughters. I have seen, even with like my mom and her relationships with her sisters and her relationships with her friends, who she took as like sisters, I have seen the power of female friendships and female relationships. That's why I always say that, like, when people talk about intimacy with a man is great. But sis, let me tell you about intimacy with your sister friends. Like see, there are things you can talk about with other women that a man can never understand. Not because he doesn't try to. It's just like, I'm never going to fully understand a man's perspective. But my female friends, they hold me up in prayer, in life. They are my, they're my, I don't want to say my defense mechanism, but I don't know what my life, even in my romantic relationship with my husband, I believe that like my girlfriends help me even in that. Now, I'm not sitting down and discussing what is going on bit by bit in my marriage, but I'm saying that in me being able to feed that a part of me, because no man can ever fully kind of, what I want to say is never, I don't want to say a man can never fully satisfy you, but as a whole human being, nobody can fulfill all your needs. So you have to find pockets of fulfillment, right? And understand that, okay, with this husband, these are the needs that he can fulfill. These are the needs that like my prayer partner can fulfill. These are the needs that and I find that like my friends, my sister friends, they're my prayer partners. They are my, when it comes to business, outside of talking to say my spouse, and I go to them because you will have the friend that is like the business guru. You're gonna have the friend that you talk to about legal stuff. You're gonna have the friend that is your fashion person. You're gonna have the friend that is your friend for like, where's the rocks? But these are all things, parts of you that need to be fed, and that help you to enjoy being yourself more, such that the pressure on your spouse is not so heavy, because he's not supposed to fulfill every single part of you. And so I always tell women that if you don't have a community, a tribe, now it doesn't mean that everybody in that tribe is all together. They are your tribe. You have chosen them, right? Maybe by virtue of you, they might all now come together. But you need to find your tribe of women who are your backbone, women who are genuinely looking out for your best interest. But it's not just about them looking out for your best interest, because you also have to be their person, looking out for their best interest. Because I find that a lot of times people are like, hey, this person, what can they do for me? Can you call, this. You just want to take. What are you bringing to the table? It's important. It's super important. So just as you take, you give. And when you're able to develop that, I promise you, life is so much sweeter. Life is so much richer. Life is, and me, I'll tell people, if there's a job opening, I'm more than likely going to recommend a woman to the position. If there is, I'm pro woman. I'm unashamedly pro women, because women we have a lot that holds us back. And so the more we can band together to come together to lift ourselves up, then the more we will find ourselves, on equal footing with men.
Man. Okay. And that was the last question from me. And so you get to ask me one question.
Okay. So, we're both in this public health space together, although that's a little different. What do you feel? And, Miss PhD, I always ask this question from people who, go for their PhDs, especially in public health, that what do you think is the advantage that this affords you on a personal and on a career level?
Okay, and that's an excellent question, because I'm someone who doesn't want to do academia, for example. And so I think what the PhD afforded me was just a little bit more insight. Though it makes you focus on one specific area, it also broadens your mind because you're interacting with a lot of different people that you have the opportunity to do while you're doing your masters, especially in like a 1 year, 2 years program. And so by broadening your mindset, your network, and learning a lot more, you become a thought leader, which you can also get by experience. But again, if you have the opportunity to do so in academia, then you learn a lot quicker. You're obviously, by having to do a lot of research and all of that, that improves your way of thinking, improves your reasoning. It helps you understand strategy a lot better. And so in public health, because think about public health or a PhD in public health as an equivalent to getting an MBA. You're learning a lot of strategy, operations, and things like that that affords you the opportunities to go out into the world and achieve a lot of things. I would say maybe a little quicker than if you don't have any work experience and you're just leaving the field from a master's. So that's my answer.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode. Just like you would share with friends about a great book you read, don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Connect with us on IG and Twitter at TWWPcast and get details on the website at worldwithoutpeople.org. And hey, remember to make loving others the story of your life. Until next time, this is the world without people.